Shall open up YouTube as well. Well, good evening, listeners, and welcome to a pre-Halloween news. Spooky news, I guess you could call it. On which note, I'm going watching the new Halloween movie tomorrow. Anyone seen it?
Can't be bothered.
No?
No.
Sparkle?
No, I want to see it, but I haven't been able to yet.
Yeah, I'm taking my eldest tomorrow. Well, she's taking me. I'm paying for dinner, so. But we'll go and see it tomorrow evening, so I'm looking forward to that. I do like the Halloween franchise.
I don't know. I remember when the first one came out, and it was kind of like, yeah. I mean, there was an era of those horror movies like, the whole Nightmare on Elm Street, which I liked, maybe the first three. And a couple of the movies in that era, But Halloween was just kind of like, all right, okay, let's see what they do. And it just became the same rubber stamp formula over and over and over. And I just couldn't be bothered after number 13 or 27 or something.
Yeah, like all of those things, like the Freddy ones, they fell off after a bit. The originals were good, but...
usually the first three of any of those slasher series are pretty good, and then...
I enjoyed H2O when they brought it back. Kind of the first time. There was a big gap before H2O. The one with Janet Leigh was in there. Obviously, Jamie Lee Curtis was back. I thought that was okay, but then they did another break. And what was the one with not Busta Rhymes? What's the other dude? The rapper in.
Coolio or something.
Yeah, it wasn't Coolio. I can't remember who it was, but yeah,
it might have been Busta Rhymes.
It could have been actually. Could have been.
Yeah,
but yeah. So I'm looking forward to this.
And they remade those. Rob Zombie did the remake versions, and they were okay.
Yeah. I've seen the. Has he done one or two Rob Zombie ones? I've seen one. I know that.
Yep, two.
Yeah.
I tell you what, the Rob Zombie one I really liked was The House of 1,000 Corpses. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It was original. It was innovative. It had interesting characters. It was still classic horror. It was like you gave a really creative guy a lot of money and total control over what he's doing. And he just made a cool movie. I was like, all right, that's pretty good. Then when number 2 came out, it was just, I turned it off halfway through. I'm like, this is just dumb. It's just dumb. I'm out. Sorry. So I don't know if other people got involved or what, but it definitely was not up to the first one.
No. So, a few notes here. What have I been doing this month? I got into a new series, watched all of it, actually. 3 seasons of Penny Dreadful. Don't know if you've seen it. That's not too bad. It's got Billy Piper in, which is always a redeeming feature. Bit of Billy Piper.
Several.
Yeah. bit of Billy Piper nakedness going on. It's all right. It's based on the comic, if you've heard of the comic. It's based on the comic if you haven't heard of the comic. But it's set sort of...
no matter what you do, it is based on the comic.
Yeah.
You can hold your breath till you fucking pass out. It's still based on the comic.
It's set sort of early 1900s, that kind of era. And they've got some historical horror figures in there. Dr. Frankenstein's in there, Jekyll and Hyde, Jack the Ripper, that kind of stuff. They bring some characters in. But it's good, pretty good. If you like that kind of thing. I told Scott about a show. I don't know if he's watched any yet. It's on Netflix called Plane Resurrection.
No, I've got a note to watch that, though. I mean, I got a long backlog of shit to watch, but that's definitely on it.
Yeah, that sounds right up your alley because it's like World War II era. Well, the first 2 are anyway. World War II era planes that they like completely rebuild from scratch. Pretty good stuff. And yeah, going watching a Halloween movie tomorrow. As I said, I watched another film called Summer of '84. Wow, don't waste your time. It's just the worst thing I've seen in ages. It kind of tries to play off the back of Stranger Things, set in the 80s. You've got all these kids with 80s gadgets, riding around the town trying to find this killer, and it just misses by a mile, so don't waste your time. Complete knockoff of Stranger Things and a bad one at that. And gaming-wise, I took a bit of a break from writing the book, the whole Coleco Chameleon saga book, and got back into that probably a couple of months ago. Did a full reread of everything I'd written. Went through all the research I'd done again. Pulled up some more bits, and I've got some more to go through later. Sent Scott a few chapters to suggest edits and things like that. Details I've missed or we hadn't discussed. So that's coming along.
I am currently on... I've read Chapter 13. So what I discovered, because I don't have a lot of experience, copy editing or whatnot, other side of reviewing technical documents. So as this is a incredibly dense storyline, often with multiple overlapping, incidents and occurrences and personalities and such, I got to tell you, it's a lot of work because you read it and you think, okay, this is something else happened here too, and it jogs your memory. You put it down, and many, many times I got down another 2 paragraphs and found, oh, okay, Mike covered it down here, or another 10 pages, And in many cases, I felt he was right. In a couple cases, I was like, well, dude, this happened before this, or there was this phone call and that had bearing on this. So, it really is a Herculean effort to put together that many moving parts. And that's one thing, man, that really struck me. I think once the book is done and available, one of my concerns, and it wasn't a tremendous concern, it was just, a natural question you'd be stupid not to ask. We all saw this happen. Is it a tired topic? Is there something new to be told? And, I honestly thought there was. But there's that confirmation bias where, you saw so many things that other people, all of us here on this phone call, all of us saw the back room to this thing that nobody, very few people saw it. Certainly none of the people that earned, I use that word loosely, earned millions or tens of thousands of YouTube views or were considered to be key figures in the saga that had fuck all to do with it, all those people that were peripheral beneficiaries or players or just the general public that read all this stuff or certainly the, I wouldn't call them the general public, I call them the exceptional public, members of Atari age, going through it, there were things that, again, all of us here, me and UK and Sparklepus and Random, saw happen behind the scenes, or in many cases, caused behind the scenes. And wow, man. You go back and you start putting in all those details and summing it up. There's the story that people think they know. And some of it, some of the high points are correct. People think that this guy came out of nowhere, showed off a bunch of renders, says he's starting a console, and it went through a bunch of convulsions into fake prototypes and went away. Yeah, true, but there's so much more to it that most people would have never known. And again, much of this was right there in their faces. And reading through these chapters, and again, I've read and edited through 12. I'm editing 13 right now. When I say editing, I don't mean changing official content or whatever. I mean, just adding to what Mike has, going and saying, okay, there's also this. Well, there's also this. And, fact checking. In a couple cases, it was like, well, this was actually 5 days later on this date. Or, some of the stuff in 13 with, Cardillo's conversations and all. I went in and just put in, quotes of it that I recall and little details like that. So anyway, yeah, there is a tremendous story here. Not just for people who saw it, but people that never heard of it, And I think there's going to be great things for this project, but just a tremendous amount of work on UK Mike's behalf. I texted him the other day. Was it Mike? I said, I think you have a book here. Yeah,
you did. Yeah,
and
I think it is. So Paula asked me a question the other day, and it's a fair question. Is it still relevant? And I sort of thought about it for a minute, and I thought it is because, like Scott says, people know what they think they know, and there's a lot that hasn't ever been made public and should be. And there's also this shit still going on. Recently, I've been watching Stop, Drop, and Retro, some of his videos, and he was obviously involved with this at the time, covering it. Some information that
Great coverage,
was passed to him. But he's been covering a console through that's development life called the Smack Z, and that's going through the same stuff. Fakes at toy shows, fakes shown to the public, just a whole load of crowdfunding and lying behind the scenes nonsense. And also, don't forget, we covered quite recently, and we'll do again, no doubt, at some point, the Polymega. Again, with its April Fool's Day launch, how genuine is that thing? Because that is also, going along the same lines that, the Chameleon did in many ways. So as long as this stuff's going on, then, yeah, I definitely think it is still relevant.
Well, as long as there's personality types that want to fake it till they make it, as long as there are scammers, as long as there are scammers who scam scammers, and as long as there are public figures, that well, I say public figures, I use that usually, that comment incorrectly and babble incoherently about things they know nothing about and are regarded to be the source, there will still be a place for this story. Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I found myself getting mildly defensive of the Chameleon, and somewhat really perturbed at the heavy breathing.
Yeah.
And shuffling. The shuffling also is really, really disconcerting. But I found myself getting mildly defensive of the Chameleon. Not that it was beyond the first 48 hours ever really going to be a thing, but that the Smack Z and that the Polymega are kind of like edging in on the territory of this story. I mean, yeah. I almost want to like Smack Z, like, no, dude, look, there's already one fucking fake Uber console out there with a hell of a story. Fuck off. Go find something else to scam.
Go and invent your own scam.
Yeah. I spent a lot of money for this scam. I actually said that to myself, too. I was reading up on the Spaxy or whatever. I just said to myself, God damn it, I spent a lot of money on this scam. I want the full effect.
Yeah, so that's pretty much been me this month. How about all of y'all?
Well, I've been anticipating... Well, a couple of things. One, I've been really anticipating Fallout 76. I like this franchise. Fallout 4 really, really sold me on Fallout. I tried Fallout Vegas. I didn't get far at all. That was still solidly in the era of unplayable double thumb games. And I got through number 4 because the gameplay dynamic had changed. And I truly did enjoy it. I thought the factions were interesting. The storyline was compelling and complex. There were 5-6 different ways you could crack the nut of defeating that game. And I really did enjoy it. And I thought, the aesthetics of it, going through and doing that 1950s sort of atomic era, I thought it was fucking great. I loved it. So in anticipation of Fallout 76, I went back through and played Fallout 4. It took me less time than I thought because I'd already beat it once. So once you kind of know where everything is in the progression, you just kind of blaze through it. So I did that. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to give number 3 another go. So down here in the studio, I got the PS3. I fired it up. I put in Fallout 3. And I started off. And it is really a great game. It is difficult. I mean, it doesn't have the non-double thumb gamer accommodations that the number 4 has. So there is a lot of things where I'm just like, save the game, go in, hammer, die, shit, restart. So I've had to grudge my way through. But whereas I think in the past I would have quit a bit easier, now that I'm kind of sold on the franchise, I'm more interested in beating it. So I've been playing Fallout 3, not terribly far along. Been playing it for a couple of weeks, you know. One thing that, as I was looking around at some of the Fallout 76 promo videos, I found a video by Adam Savage's group called Tested, and they assembled this new replica Pip-Boy. And it's from a company called The Wand Company. And I encourage all of our listeners to take, if you like props, like movie props and incessant shuffling and gnawing sounds that never seem to stop.
Eating potato chips.
Yeah. If you like movie props and ephemeral like that, like I got, you know, the Mystery Science Theater robots, you know, those things are great. If you like stuff like that, this is for you. Because so often in these sort of video game tributes and props and stuff, they really screw it up. Because they take something like, I can't tell you how many times I've looked at it, and there's something about my personality. I'm not cheap, I mean, by any means, but there's a certain point at which I look at something and go, it's not worth that. I won't pay it. Just no. And for me, when those stupid little 16-ounce bottles of Coke, when they used to be like 89 cents, right? Not that long ago. It's like, all right, okay, whatever, fuck. When they hit $1, I'm like, I don't know, that's kind of sketchy. Now that they're like $1.75, $1.89, $2, I'm like, you know, I'm not paying $2 for that. It isn't worth it. I just won't do it. So there's a lot of these movie, video game props that come up where you look at it and you go, you know, that's worth about $150. I would buy that for $150. And you kind of click on the link, fully prepared to spend $150. And you land on the page, you look over the pics, you're like, yeah, it's kind of worth it. And you look at the price, you know, it's like $8.50. And you're like, no. You don't buy it, right? So I just won't spend $850 for something worth $150. I'm not going to do it. So in this case, I was figuring, $150. I'd probably sell it for $200. I think I'd do this. So it's a very highly detailed model of the Pip-Boy. I mean, it comes disassembled in components. You assemble it, right? And it's in a beautiful presentation box. It's just a really, really first-class product. So I figured, worth $150. I'd spend $2. No problem. So I click on the link expecting it to be, you know, $600 or something like that. $150. I'm like, no shit. You people got it right. You know, and immediately I ordered one. And you sell a lot more things by selling things than you sell from not selling them because you fucking bomb on the price or bomb on features. So I got this thing pre-ordered, and it'll be arriving, they say, holiday season of this year. So, you know, I'm guessing, I know they got the pre-production ones. So I'm guessing, you know, another month or so they'll show up. And one of the neat things that they did is they had the guy that runs the company on, and they're asking about the screen and all that. He goes, yeah, we just kind of left that alone because we know people are going to mod the shit out of this thing. And so I started looking at the dimensions and all that. And what I came up with, there is a Pip-Boy app, and it works. It has a demo mode where it's totally autonomous, or it actually does have a feature where you can link it to the PlayStation or the Xbox or the PC, and you can actually use the Pip-Boy in the game fully functional, right? Now, you'd have to be a flaming nerd to do it. You won't catch me with a Pip-Boy on my arm. But it's a really neat feature. So I got one of these kids' tablets that has a screen that's the exact right size. So I got one of those. I loaded the Pip-Boy app, and it's just beautiful. So once the actual Pip-Boy gets here, I'll assemble it. I'll integrate that tablet screen and PCB and all that. I'm going to have to move the battery to the backside, I think. We'll find out when I get it. So that's pretty darn cool. I really like that Pip-Boy.
I don't know, Scott. It sounds like a bromance here. It sounds like you might be showing up to work with a Pip-Boy duct taped to your arm.
No, but I did show up last night at my buddy's party in a Apollo spacesuit. That was pretty fun. Oh, dude, it was good. We went over to my buddy's house, and he and his wife put a lot of work into their costumes. They were dressed up as Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker, and the baby, 7-month-old, was dressed up as Yoda. Freaking adorable Yoda. I mean, it was, you know, I was carrying a kid around for half of the party, just chilling with him because I love this kid. He's fun. So when we were like, they did like a costume contest, and like, it was like write down your, favorite thing. So I wrote down, gay Jedi. And I was like, hey, write down gay Jedi. And I ended up winning, but because I bought that spacesuit like years ago. I just like put it on for something like this. I didn't like put any time into making it, but I thought that Seb should have taken that one. But so it is a pretty cool thing. I gotta tell you, I had a lot of fun because they live about an hour from me. So I put on the spacesuit and I rode there on one of my motorcycles. So I'm literally riding down like through towns and down the highway on a bike in a full Apollo spacesuit. And I gotta tell you, it's some funny shit. Like I pull up next to like a state trooper, like policeman, and he just kind of looks over at me like, the fuck? I don't even know what to like. You could tell he just switched completely out of cop mode and wasn't thinking like, is that a DOT approved helmet? I wonder, and he was just like looking at it like, I've seen some strange shit on the road. And, a fucking fully dressed astronaut on a motorcycle. So I pull up next to one light.
Where are you going, space boy?
Yeah, you ain't from around here, are you? You smuggling some of that moon dust down the road. But no, so this dude pulls up next to me in this car, rolls down the window and everything, and he's like, that's strange, man. That's different. I was like, I got off late from work. I didn't have time to change. Okay. I went by Powers, my friend's brewery, which I gotta talk about that real quick too, the Gaming Expo. Anyway, I'm sitting there before I go to Seb's party, I'm sitting there having a beer at Powers. So I'm sitting at the bar in the full spacesuit with a beer, right? Like people are walking in like, the fuck, and a couple friends of mine walk in, right, and they're like, we figured we'd see you tonight, but not necessarily in an astronaut suit. And I was like, hey, we got to take off at 8, but I'm stopping by for a beer before we go up. It was a lot of fun. So anyway, Pip-Boy, very cool. I recommend it. It looks beautiful. And the neat thing is you can assemble it, put it back into the presentation box, and you're getting totally your money's worth for a gaming physical prop. It's freaking beautiful. The Powers brewery thing, we went over there. So they lived up to their end of the bargain. They got a truck. They got 2 able-bodied people. They came over to my house, and they had never moved. They had, other than the course of an arcade, never touched a real arcade machine. So it really isn't that simple. I mean, the complex. It's simple. You just pick up everything and move them, right? But if you hadn't done that sort of thing before, So they come over, we load the games, we go to the brewery, we unload them, and then we put them all into the back of the brewery, like the sort of the restaurant area of the brewery, if you will. And it was a beautiful presentation. And the thing that I didn't quite know, I go to my audience. I go to expos where I know that people are there for gaming. So, I told Kevin and Mel, the owners, I said, I don't really know how this will go. If it'll be, 50 people at the bar and 2 people playing games, or 50 people playing games and 2 people at the bar, And it turned out pretty much that way. It was, everybody went nuts. There were a few people that you just weren't gamers and didn't give a shit. But that was like an exceptionally tiny minority. Pretty much everybody came in and just went nuts. So it was a lot of success there. Excuse me. Let me get a drink. Sorry. Anyway, huge success. Everybody had a lot of fun, and it looks like we're going to make an annual thing. I did get a phone call a couple days later from one of the newspaper reporters for a pretty big local DC area paper. And they were like, hey, we'd like to come out and do a piece on collecting and your collection and video games and all that. So I said, sure. So tomorrow they're coming out to my place, and we're going to sit down and, so of course, always be promoting, plug the podcast. So it'll be Retro Gaming Roundup presents Scott's Home Arcade. So that'll be pretty cool. Then the last thing I wanted to definitely throw out there for y'all. I just finished season 2 of a show that I never in a million years would have thought I'd like. And I was joking about earlier, it's called Glow. Now, in the 80s, there was a show called Glow. And it was like sort of the female version of the whole pro wrestling thing. So you had scripted storylines, characters, and I remember the time seeing about 2 seconds of this, and they even did like music videos and stuff. And I was like, this is fucking dumb. I'm out. And it was really dumb. So when this show came on, somebody I respect their opinion, was saying, dude, you got to watch it. It's actually really good. So I did. And, I cannot wait for season 3. It is an incredibly well-produced show. It is about a female wrestling troupe, called Glow in the TV show. And it's basically loosely based on the original. But it's so of the era. I mean, at a couple points, like they're hanging out in like their building, where they train. They've got arcade machines in there. There's actually a robot, because that was a huge cultural thing, is, robots were real. They were coming, So there's actually a Glowbot that, like, is featured quite a bit in the series. And it's definitely a product of the early 80s. The music is there. The video games are there. The dress, the hair. I mean, everything. It's really kind of a, non-video game focused, but sort of dive into the 80s culture. So, not something I would have ever thought I would have enjoyed, but I would be totally remiss if I didn't tell the listeners about it. You guys should really, really watch Glow and get back to us, pop in on the Facebook page, hit us up on the news. Let us know what you think if you watched it and liked it, or if you watched it and were like, dude, what were you smoking? I'll tell you what I was smoking. All right. So that's my crap.
What have I been doing? I have, in terms of watching stuff, we started Peaky Blinders recently, and in the Halloween tip, I've been watching some of the new Sabrina, which is very different to the old Sabrina. I'll say that much. Seems all right for now. A couple of episodes in, see how it goes. In terms of Penny Dreadful, we were watching that along quite a few years ago now, and then just kind of fell off. I think about halfway through season 2. I was kind of enjoying that it was, kept adding more and more of the timelines and stuff on characters and famous people, and such bits and pieces weren't quite lining up, accurately. But that didn't matter. But I quite enjoyed the fact that they were adding, oh, here's a sort of Frankenstein, here's a this, here's that, and stuff, and it was all quite fun. But yeah, I just seemed to fall off it. Gaming-wise, I finally finished my sort of initial playthrough of Steins Gate, which has left some portable time free, so I've now just downloaded a translation patch for Valkyria Chronicles 3, started playing that, and that's very much Valkyria Chronicles. Very easy at the moment because it's still sort of tutorializing a lot of stuff, but I'm sure I'll plow a lot of hours into that if the second one and first one are anything to go by. Played a bit of the Nintendo Switch NES online stuff, just sort of dabbling, messing about with that. Emulation seems solid. The interface is quite fun. It's obviously not the only place you can play a lot of those games, but it's kind of all right for a sort of jump in, jump out sort of thing. And I promised myself this month I'd start playing through Resident Evil 7 properly in VR, but as yet I sort of done a couple of half-an-hour sessions and end up just far too fucking nerves on edge. And the last session I sort of started playing it, and about 2 minutes in I just had to dive out and ended up playing like Polybius and some other bits and pieces, because as soon as I'd sort of loaded in and all the creepy noise was going on, and I knew I was about to go into this chase scene that I'd sort of failed on the last time I played it, I was just like, no, can't do this. It's just fucking with my brain too much. It's just too fucking scary. So yeah, it's been sort of slow progress trying to get through that, but hopefully I'll get there. But that's about it, really. Not been doing a great deal, it seems.
All right. Well, we celebrated my daughter's 7th birthday. We rented a manor house and had she wanted to do a theme for a carnival. So we had all kinds of carnival games that you would find, like, shooting gallery, shoot the ducks, throw the football through the hole, sort of like a whack-a-mole type game, ring the bell, slam the hammer thing, ring toss on the bottles. So I built some games. I rented some games. We had snow cones, cotton candy. We had 70 kids show up, so that was quite interesting. We rented some inflatables, so some bounce houses and things like that. One of the local bounce companies, they have a really cool inflatable that it's like it has like a ring toss and basketball hoop and things like that. So if you're looking for something fun for a corporate event, I'd recommend trying to find this. It's cool. It's like 4 games, and it's a giant tent, and it was just interesting. A lot of people had a good time with that. As far as the gaming, we rented the new Lara Croft game. Haven't bought it because those Square Ubisoft games, they always seem to drop in price like a rock after about 60 days. So don't really want to pay full price for it. But my kids wanted to play it one weekend, so we rented it, had a good time. I'll probably end up picking that up when it has a price drop. Still playing through Friday the 13th, the max level. They gave that out for the month of October, so this probably won't hear it, but if you are a PSN network subscriber, you can download it in the month of October and get it for free. It's great because there's a lot of fresh meat playing the game, so being a max level character, I'm playing against people that is the first few times they've played the game, so I'm just going through and murdering everybody. If I'm Jason or if I'm a counselor, I'm able to fix a car and escape. And I kind of love griefing the other online players. I'll drive around in circle, beeping the horn, not letting them in my car, and just kind of take off and escape. So having fun with that. It's kind of been the nonstop birthday celebration week. So we went to Dave & Buster's this past Friday and played some games there. Got to play the new Rampage and the new Tomb Raider sort of like stand-up shooter. That was fun. I mean, again, it's kind of another light gun shooter. It's a huge screen. I don't even know how. I mean, it has to be 120 inches or something. I mean, it's just friggin' gigantic. Have any of you guys seen this thing yet?
No.
No. Where's it at?
It was at Dave & Buster's, and it's a Tomb Raider shooter game. I mean, it's gigantic. 4 players, all get a gun at the same time, and got to play I think Raw Thrills makes the new Rampage game. It's really arcadey. The graphics look great. There's just something missing. It just feels like it's a little bit frantic, and at least with the original Rampage, it felt like the pace wasn't so frantic that you could kind of scoot around and jump from building to building and eat the army soldiers or, avoid the helicopters and things like this. And this is just straight up frantic. I mean, shit flying at you all over the place. And it's really hard to eat any of the characters and retain your health. I mean, it's just kind of sucking out quarters. I mean, I guess to some degree that's what the original Rampage was, but just a little too frantic for my taste. It's nice. You get to play, the 3 original characters. The graphics look great, but I don't know. Could have been done a little bit better.
Did Raw Thrills
looking forward
do
to Halloween here in a couple days. Gonna stuff our candy bags later today, and I'm handing out mini bottles like I always do to the parents. This year, the one of the local liquor stores had a little bit better selection, so people will be getting rum, Bacardi rum, or Jack Daniel's whiskey mini bottles at my house.
I'm coming to your house.
Nice.
Your parties sound good as well. Did Raw Thrills do a new Turtles? Big 4-player Turtles?
Yeah, I played that one out at, I don't know if that was Raw Thrills or not. I did play the new Turtles when I was out at, in Portland at, what is Clay Calgo's place called?
Ground Control.
Ground Control, yeah. I played it at Ground Control. That Turtles game was a lot of fun. I think I talked about it on the show. I didn't have anybody else playing with me at the time, and I think that's kind of half the fun of those, beat 'em up games. But that I seem to like that a little bit better than this Rampage for whatever reason.
Yeah, you mentioned bouncy castles and shit earlier. When I was married, my wife, now ex-wife, and her sister had this great business idea. So we're going to buy a couple of bouncy castles, rent them out at weekends. Only when they came, neither of them could lift the fucking things. Even between them, they couldn't lift them. So guess who ended up fucking delivering bouncy castles on a Saturday and collecting them on a Sunday? Me and my brother-in-law ended up doing it. And there's many times we got up early on a Sunday morning after a heavy Saturday night. And so what people would do is they'd just, when the party's finished Saturday night, take the blower in the house and leave the castle outside, obviously. So, often we'd get to a place and I'd say, right, you go and get the blower out of the house, get the money, and I'll fold up the castle. He'd come outside and I'd be asleep on the castle. Just like, been there 10 minutes, hungover as fuck, just lay down on the thing and thought,
Did it work? Did it turn a profit for you?
It did, but it just interrupted anything we ever wanted to do at a weekend. So after a bit, we both said to him, look, either you get a trolley and do it yourselves or we're out. So they sold them.
Yeah. No, I mean, it seems like it would be a decent
retained
business
one
model.
for personal use.
Well, we did one. We had one of the blowers. I think we had 3 in total. One of the blowers wasn't great. It worked a bit, so we thought we'll just keep it for our own family parties, and we did that. But then, yeah, I just got rid of that one as well.
Her name was Giselle.
Yeah, I was making cotton candy, and they didn't tell me that the concessions were going to come with, like a milk carton full of floss sugar. So I had ordered all this sugar online, and then the guy shows up and he's like, well, here, this comes with the rental. I was like, oh shit. So I was making cotton candy like the size of volleyball, or yoga balls for these kids. They're like, I want an extra large. I'm like, you're going to get extra large. And I'm pretty certain at least half the population got diabetes after that party. I mean, I had this one kid, and he was pretty chunky. And he came up, and he's like, need an extra large. I'm like, all right, buddy. I almost felt like a bartender. And he was back like 10 minutes later. He's like, need another one. I'm like, okay. And I'll be damned, that kid didn't come by 4 times, man. And he was just like, he was like sweating at the end. He's like, just one last one, Because I'm like, all right, it's last call, closing it down. That kid showed up. And,
I'll take 2.
I can quit anytime I want.
Yeah. Where's your mom? I ate my mom.
Yeah. You know what a cavity is? Dad says we can't afford one.
All right, let's get to some newsing then. Just a heads up before we start, I've had dodgy internet this week, and it was off a little earlier today. But so if it does go off, Random's ready to jump in and carry on the stream, and I'll rejoin when I can. But it's been okay last few hours, so we shall continue and see how we go. And the first one here is sent in by Random. I think I saw he'd sent it and then didn't bother. But I did see this one pop up. The TV show, Dara O'Brien's Go 8-Bit, you may remember we interviewed Steve McNeil on the show, has been cancelled after 3 seasons, which is a bit of a shame. I thought the show worked pretty well. But, in his interview, he would go on about the technical troubles they had, and licensing the games and what have you was a bit of a pain. But sadly, they are not renewing it for season 4. So that has gone away, which is a real shame because I did like the show.
Damn shame. Well, I hope he lands okay and he picks up a new gig.
Well, he's still doing it
from...
live. The TV show came from a live show that they did, and that live show is still going on. I think it's called Wi-Fi Wars. You can go along, watch it in a theatre, and they have a mobile app, and you join a hotspot, and you can take part in the show on your phone and things. So they are still on the road with it. It's just not on TV anymore.
One of them, I think, probably Sam, maybe. He's always on Twitch. Seems to be
right.
Very, very sort of active streamer these days. So he's still doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Got one here from Sean Stevenson, and he says there's some cool stuff in here, especially the Tesla coil. So this is a list of 17 different Raspberry Pi kits that make great weekend projects. Some of them are pretty sensible, some of them are stupid, but the link is definitely worth a visit because at least there's going to be one or two in here you're going to want to order and possibly will. I know there's already two I'm ordering, the Tesla being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll run through a couple of the ones first. First, they tell you how to get started. Like if you don't know what a Pi is and you need a kit starter kit, no big deal there. There is the Magpie, which apparently is a Google Voice client. Okay. The next one is Amazon Alexa. I don't like Amazon Alexa or Google Voice or any of these things in their finished form, let alone I'm not going to build a damn kit to have. Yeah, let me build my own spyware for Amazon. No thanks. There is a electric skateboard that uses the Pi as the controller. You know, obviously not for the high current, but for, everything else. There is a Tesla coil that the Pi translates music to and visualizes it on the Tesla. That's getting ordered because that's pretty badass. There is the basic kit to turn a Pi into a computer, which of course is just called a Pi. You plug it up to a monitor, you hook up a keyboard and mouse, and aside of mass storage, you've got a perfectly usable computer. You just throw on a network storage link or whatever, or a big ass SD card, and you're set. Wearable camera. This one's kind of dumb because you take a Pi Zero 3D printer case and make this giant camera. You can get ones literally the size of a button now for less than the cost of a Pi. Little robot that rolls around and does things. A little robot car. That's pretty cool. There's also a little robot tank that drives around and does things. That's cool as well. The Pi-Cade and RetroPie, we all know about that. There is a mood light. Don't really see the point. A scrollbot that just kind of drives around the tabletop. Okay. A couple of other RetroPie, boxes. All that's pretty good. There is a radio kit that looks kind of neat. A little drone that uses the Pi as the controller. That's pretty cool too. Although, again, there's flight controllers out there with the gyros integrated, or you can just buy the whole drone ready to fly for less than it'll cost you to build this. So, again, some of these things, not a lot of point. Some of them, quite a bit of point, like that friggin' Tesla I gotta have.
Yeah. Couple of people left their mortal coil this month. Random Dave sent in the first one there.
So I was just looking at, I'll take that quickly, I guess. If anyone who knows the 2000 AD comic sort of line, graphic novel line, there's Carlos, I presume his name's something like Ezquerra, a Spanish guy who started his career in Spain but got headhunted by the UK title. He was the guy who was commissioned to come up with the correct character and came up with the very famous now Judge Dredd character. Did a lot of work with them. He had a brief brush with lung cancer in 2010. I thought it was all sort of cleared up, but it came back, and unfortunately he succumbed to it earlier this month. I think it was maybe just before the month.
Yeah, another one Sean Stevenson sent in. Again, I would have sent it because I think I posted it in WhatsApp at the time. But Ben Dalgleish, aged just 52, also passed away this month. Ben, obviously, I know him mainly from his Commodore 64 games. He was a musician, did game music around the Amstrad Spectrum, Commodore 64 era, and then onto the Amiga as well. Did some great video game soundtracks, and sad loss. I think he was also in Bedrooms to Billions, maybe the Amiga year ones as well. I can't remember, but yeah, sadly passed away this month.
Oh man, I've got one here from Carl Klitsky, and from top to bottom, this post is a winner. I kind of like this. Carl, you hit a home run. It says, "Hey guys, I think it was August. You guys mentioned something about gender reveal parties. I think we did, calling them stupid or something like that." Mm-hmm. And it says, where parents use colored cake or something to tell their friends the gender of their soon-to-be-born child. If it wasn't your show, feel free to ignore this news tidbit. I'm pretty certain it probably was us. And he goes, here's the too long didn't read version. Guy shoots a thing that's supposed to explode in colored smoke and starts a wildfire. So, yeah, actually, funny thing. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think these gender reveal things are getting a little dumb. I mean, not as dumb as, statements like, my genitals don't define my gender. No, they kind of do. But, I was talking about this with a French friend of mine, and she was saying, birthdays in America are such like Mark was talking about, the birthday party they did, and she was saying, in America, it's such a big deal. And there's the parties and the bouncy things or the toys and, and all the other children come over and they all, have such energy, in France, on a birthday, they'll have 2 or 3 friends over and, they'll, open a present and, write a thank you note. And then the parents will, give them some candy and that's it. It's like nothing like in America, And I said, yeah, but, I get the birthday thing, but the gender thing is getting a little dumb. And, yeah, I remember when I was a kid and when I was an adult, up until like the last 2 years or so, this gender stuff took off. It was like people would ask, do you know what it is? Yeah, it's a good girl. Okay, cool. And that was all that really needed to be done. So this guy, who was a Border Patrol agent, so he knew firearms and the gist of stuff. He went out there and they had this thing set up, but basically it's called Tannerite. And you can buy this stuff off the shelf. It's a explosive emulator. It's not really an explosive. It does make a big bang and a big puff of smoke, but the idea being you mix up this Tannerite and you shoot it with a rifle and it makes a big bang and it's all fine and good. Well, he ends up setting some of the Arizona wild woods there on fire and driving out the wildlife. So yeah, and then they ended up like charging him with it. And, he went to court and he pled guilty. He's like, look, I just didn't think it would go this way. I'm sorry. So he's got to pay $100,000 up front and another $120,000 in monthly installments of $500 over the next 20 years, Jesus. Presuming his income does not increase.
Wow.
Next time, bring a fire extinguisher. Just saying.
No shit.
I got one here from Jason Worley. He sends us in a message. Check out this cool Sega Saturn CD reverse engineering video. And this is a link to Dr. Abrasive's lab where he's trying to engineer plug-in flash card for the Sega Saturn. So this video is about 30 minutes long. Admittedly, I didn't follow the entire thing, but it looks like we're getting pretty close here. There's a Patreon available for Dr. Abrasive. He's working on coming up with a good way to get a USB thumb drive or hard drive to work that you can dump all of your games on, have that work. You know, the Sega Saturn is still one of the elusive consoles that hasn't been effectively emulated. Looks like we're getting pretty close with the work that Professor Abrasive is doing here.
Yeah, just on that as well, the Odroid. Now, there was a video, I think it was Game81, one of his I watched last week, and he was showing off the Odroid and some of the emulation that does, and he was showing Saturn emulation, which looked pretty good, and he was, you know, in the video he leaves the load times in, which aren't all that long actually, so it looks like there's another option for good emulation on top of the more powerful Pis. One here from Adi, who is about to become a father for the first time, probably in about 6 days. It's due, so 3rd of November. There'll be a little Adi running around. He says, hello everyone, your fave band, the British IBM, have a new single out Friday the 5th of October. Yes, that's already gone. So probably out by the time you're reading this. How very perceptive of you. It's called Where is Matthew Smith? And the music video was filmed at the Retro Computer Museum in Leicester. There'll be a YouTube link in the show notes, and obviously there'll be a link to all our news items in the show notes. So follow the link, check out the news items we talk about, and let us know what you think, and let us know what you think about Adi's new song, Where is Matthew Smith? Also available in the usual places like Spotify and iTunes, etc.
So I got one here that, regrettably, I can't verify how well it works, but I'm sure the rest of our co-hosts can. And it's email here from Sean Stevenson. And it says, very cool. Is there no end to hidden stuff in Google code? You know, other than the stuff that spies on everything you do? No, that's pretty much it. So there is a text adventure game hidden in Google. So you go to Google, and depending on whether you're on a Mac or a PC, you either hit Command-Option-J on a Mac or Control-Shift-J on a PC. So the Google, you know, it should come up with the code in the window and give you a playable game. On Linux, it does not. I thought maybe the window does come up, but the code doesn't execute. I thought it might run, but it didn't. Anyway, it says that you get a giant capital G that's part of the Google logo. I guess that's a playable character. And then it's a text adventure. So apparently they did some pretty neat features, like, you know, you type in traditional text adventure commands like do a barrel roll, and it'll cause the screen to rotate. So they did some modern stuff with some classic premises. So check it out, see if it works, and let us know.
One here that
it totally works.
All right. One here that I sent in from Racket Boy, and it's called Unexpected Joys of, and I've just clicked off it, Unexpected Joys of Kids Playing with Atari 2600 Games. And it's a fairly long, not overly long article about a guy and his son playing some old Atari 2600 games, and him being surprised by how much his son got into it, you know. Even though the games look bad, very simplistic, his son never once got frustrated with the gameplay. You know, if he did something wrong, it became fairly obvious what he had to do, and he'd go back and do it and get that sense of achievement. So it's all about the simplicity of the older games and kids getting into them. So decent article. It was a good read, so I recommend you go and read it.
Got one here from, it's Mike James. We know this guy. Hey, everybody, it's UK Mike. And it's a link here that says, is Nintendo a dick? And it's from the Digitizer 2000. What's that?
I said probably.
Probably, yes. So it says Nintendo, eh? They're the Disney games of video games. Yeah, family-friendly, jolly, nice stuff. I mean, Mario, who's so approachable. Don't you just want to rub his bare belly while making this noise? Thump, 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 I guess. And it says, but look closer into Mario's eyes. There's something there. Something cold, something ruthless, uncompromising. Those are the eyes that represent corporate ethos and maximize profits while attempting to crush its competitors. All right. They're asking, is Nintendo being a dick? And the first thing that they quote is deliberately limiting stock. So they make the point that Nintendo is trying to avoid the oversaturation of the 1983 crash. Yeah, sure. But they even have a dick rating. That's pretty good. But they were rewarded 6 out of 10 for being a dick by limiting their stock. Forcing games companies to buy cartridges from them. Again, this dates back to the NES era with their security chip. Dick rating, 7 out of 10. Oh, yeah, this is actually, I remember this. I watched this years ago, where Nintendo went on and played we're the nice guys, though, during the Night Trap hearings in Congress, threatening retailers, over space and stocking. The whole deal with the Nintendo working with Sony to develop the CD add-on and then screwing them over and taking it for themselves, kind of like somebody we know. And, of course, that spawned the Sony PlayStation, which ended up being arguably the bigger competitor. And then they have a great picture here of the Phoenix or Ace or whatever his name is, the attorney. And it says lawsuits, so many lawsuits. And they go into all the different times Nintendo has sued everybody. Selling hardware at a profit, screwing with YouTube, and on and on and on and on. So, and then the users kind of come in with their own versions and their own accounts of Nintendo being a dick. So, yeah, I could see that.
Another one that Mike sent in from Digitizer 2000, writer of which Paul Rose has, of course, been enjoying the Norbrick this weekend, along with a lot of other unlucky retro heads. This one is about a particularly awful-looking TV game show called the Super Mario Challenge. Whereas, there's a lot on this page, but flicking through, there appears to be a guy dressed in a blue shirt with white dungarees, trying to be the mysterious plumber that never existed. I guess, I don't know whether the licensing didn't go fully to him looking like either Mario or Luigi, perhaps. But he has made an effort to have some sort of porn star looking moustache. So, that's at least something. But obviously this quality seems to carry on, as he starts off telling them that they're playing Super Mario Bros. 1, despite the fact they're playing Super Mario Bros. 3. There's a tips section where he tells you such great tips, as in, here's a block in Mario 3 that has a whole 10 coins in it. And it sort of continues. It looks pretty awful. I imagine this is probably out there on YouTube if you'd like to watch it at some point. Yes, there's a link in the article, which will of course be linked in the show notes. So yeah, just get having a look at some pretty awful game show content. It looks pretty shocking.
There's one there from Random that I'll leave for him, which is the archaeology one, and one from Chris Lethco. Internet Archive launches browser-based C64 emulator. I don't think I need to go into that too much more. We've seen them do other systems. You emulate the systems and load the game ROMs right there in your browser, and now you can do it for the C64 as well.
So that one here that I've been following along, I'm actually a backer of this project, and it is the ColecoVision Phoenix, which is an FPGA-based ColecoVision. And
Can't be done.
Okay, fair enough. But I got in on this some time ago, and it's pretty neat. I mean, it's a Coleco-esque kind of case, and it comes with the ColecoVision FPGA core. They've also added an Atari 2600 core, so since that's really well understood. So basically it boots up, it's a Coleco or it's a Atari. It is neat. They say it plays all ColecoVision games, hopefully meaning that it includes the Super Game module compatibility, which should be the case. And obviously additional cores could be developed, without question. So anyway, reasonably priced. It looks pretty solid. It doesn't look like it's going to get funded. They had a pretty reasonable price. They need $230,000. So $230,000 is about what you need to get this thing out the door and have it running. You got injection molding costs for the shell. You got the boards, all that. I don't see anything wrong with the price they're asking. Right now, it's sitting at $85,000, and they need $230,000. So it closes November 7th. If they were sitting at 200 or 180, I'd be pretty optimistic. I think it'll end up closing, I'm guessing, maybe 100K. So less than half funded. It ain't going to happen, which kind of sucks. And, I get it. I mean, I ask myself, do I need this? No. Do I want it? Yeah. And there are tons of other ways to play. Like, I've got a ColecoVision, right? And I've got an Atari and all that. And I've got, multi-carts for the system so I can play every game there is. And do I have a Raspberry Pi with, RetroPie? Yeah, I do. So this is going to, in no way is this going to let me play any game that I can't already play. Will I tell the difference between FPGA emulation and the emulation on the Pi? Probably not. I probably won't see it. It's got some convenient features, but yeah, ultimately I don't think it's going to succeed. And this is something that's properly done with a loyal following. So, too bad. I certainly hope I'm wrong. I certainly hope it gets a last-minute second and third wind and funds, but I don't see it happening.
No, it doesn't look like it. I get the site in pounds because I'm over here. Their target in pounds is about 180, and they're on about 66, so about a third of the way. But yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to happen, unfortunately. There is another console launch coming up, and I, like many of you, I guess, got the email from Intellivision Entertainment, and that is introducing the Intellivision Amico.
Can we do a different one before we do that?
We can if you like.
Just kind of want to lead into it with a couple of these other things.
Okay. Random, do you want to do the game development archaeology
one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was an interesting one that cropped up in my nerdy game development chat that we found was quite interesting. And the gist of it is that you're making a Game Boy game. Your game's doesn't fill the full 2 megabytes of RAM. So, you pad the game data goes at the start of the ROM image, and then you just sort of pad the rest of the chip out with random data. Now, back in the day, if you were doing this in DOS, you would often, as you're filling in random data, a lot of other programs, data was kind of accessible to other programs that shouldn't have been, memory address wise. So what has ended up happening here is exactly that, and the DOS link, compiler and linker, has dumped in a big chunk of memory and stuffed that in, which has ended up, as people have discovered this and dug into it, includes loads of the source code, well, not the source code, but the sort of the running program code for Borland's Turbo C IDE, and as well as traces of the QBasic MS-DOS editor, and all sorts of other bits and pieces that are sort of stuffed into this ROM. And so whereas, these days you get sort of the equivalent of this, I guess, is I can't remember which, was it a PGA Tour Tiger Woods that ended up shipping to fill out the disc. they ended up putting an episode of South Park on there that you couldn't ever sort of access unless you sort of like data mine the image, and suddenly everyone found that they'd sort of just stuffed it with pirated videos and things. This is kind of similar to that, but a bit kind of a more sort of like deeper into the system way. In theory, this shouldn't happen if you're using a Windows-based editor, because nowadays, all the other areas of memory that other programs have got are kind of protected away from each other. But back in the day, you could clearly, as this shows, just dump a load of workable running code of some other program into your other file. So it's quite a fun thing that they found in Zelda, original Zelda Link's Awakening on the Game Boy.
Good game. Huh. I wanted to bring one up that was sent in from Katie Green at Crazy Games. Katie emailed in to let us know that Crazy Games is launching a game developer portal where independent developers can publish their browser games and get some revenue share. To celebrate this, they're launching a $2,000 prize up for grabs. You can go to developer@crazygames.com to make your submission. They're trying to help the budding game developers community get exposure to the titles that they deserve. So she wanted to get that out to all of our listeners. Now I have, looks like their company is based in Belgium. Probably. It seems like these Flash sites kind of pop up all over the place. There's, sort of endless sites you can go out there and play a lot of games online, HTML for free. I spent a little bit of time on this one. Did any of you guys take time to check it out?
I did not.
So I was playing a game that was Shootout Getaway. It was pretty fun to play. Apparently that's also available on iOS or on Android. And then a game that I kind of got hooked on is called 10 More Bullets. It's kind of like a side-scrolling missile command type game where you have a static base on the bottom. There's ships that are flying, and you only get 10 bullets. And when you hit something with a bullet, it sort of breaks apart and causes a chain reaction. Those little pieces fly apart and can hit other ships, and if those ships explode, their pieces go flying and knock off other ships. So you try to get a high score based on how many chain explosions you can kind of get going. Game became pretty addictive quickly. I really enjoy it. Not sure if it's available on iOS or Android, but I would probably pick it up if it is. I think this is interesting. I don't know if we really need a place today for people to publish their games. It seems like you could pretty readily publish them
together, all of the Castlevania stuff, and put it into a nice book into one place, like Data East and the one for them, and like a Sega Arcades Classics one and things like that.
So they have a ever hidden and moving feature where you can tap through some of the pages of the book. Once again, they've moved it. I finally found it, and it looks like a pretty nice looking book. That's the one thing about like iTunes is every time they come out with a new version of iTunes, they completely alter the interface and how it works and how it looks and what it does. So every time there's a new iTunes, you have to completely relearn iTunes, which I haven't used iTunes in probably 5 years or more, so not really missed.
It's a bag of shit piece of software.
Yeah.
Even on a
and
Mac.
it's a system takeover too.
Yeah.
And more or less, you're saying my computer is now my iTunes station.
Yeah.
It's only I'm kind of intrigued by this book. I mean, it's 96 pages, so I'm sorry, 98 pages. I just wonder, like how much are you really getting here?
98 pages.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that would kind of put a precise figure on it. You could probably even do a little math there and figure out your cost per page.
You think so? Yeah, I mean, it seems like they got a little table of contents here. Some of the games are Satan's Hollow, Chiller, Nightmare Creatures, Waxworks, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, Ghosts and Goblins, Ghosts and Ghouls and Ghosts, Demon Crest, Maximo, Splatterhouse, Zombies Ate My Neighbor, Ghoul Patrol, Monster Party, Haunted House. It seems like they're missing a couple big ones. These guys tend to not really do anything past 8-bit, maybe a little 16-bit here. I don't know if you're a horror fan. I might end up picking this up.
Got one here from Sean Stevenson, Retro Sean to his friends. Another great hack from Hackaday. Not too sure about the shapes, though. And the title of this is Asteroids in Color. Now, this, I think, to me, sums up the classic point. Just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should do a thing. And somebody built a daughter board for Asteroids, the Vector arcade game. And they added in a digital analog converter and some support circuitry. And basically what they do is they take the XY signals, figure out when certain characters are being drawn and where they are, and then it colorizes them using, I guess, a lookup table, like, oh, it's this, all right, turn it this color. So what it gives you is the ability to hook up a vector monitor instead of a XY monitor, which removes the brilliance and magic of a vector game. So you just took that away. Then it displays it on an RGB monitor, but the characters have changed shape. So there's all these random squiggles and squares and just gibberish that takes place of the beautifully drawn asteroids and ships. So I'm not quite sure the point of this whatsoever, but yeah, you can colorize and ruin fucking asteroids if you really want.
It's a little bizarre. I agree, the sort of spiral coil shape is strange. And like you said, the beauty of asteroids is the vector graphics. And they look great, and it's fine, and you get that blazing bright vector light coming off the screen, where this just, I don't know. I mean, I'd almost rather play the 2600 version in color than this thing. It's just kind of strange. But, I mean, hey, it's cool that people are out there and they're building and modding things. I'm never going to fault somebody for that. Just not my personal flavor right here.
Here's another case of just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should do a thing. And this is from Virgil Spinelli and Spin. Good to hear from him again. And Virgil says, a failed Kickstarter, but a great pitch. Nice done, retro Atari Pit Fighter style game. Very funny. All right, so maybe their little video was kind of funny, but it doesn't translate to a product anybody needs. So basically whoa, that's loud. It looks like a Mortal Kombat clone. The characters are dressed up and, live motion digitized and inserted onto a background. And, okay, I guess. I mean, there are some funny bits in the little pitch film where they're filming the guy, and these seem like really funny, cool guys, and like they thought this was a pretty good project, And there's little bits like where the one guy turns around in his chair, and the subtitle says like, "I just learned how to speak properly." So, I mean, I just don't see the need for it, though. It's like, do I want a Mortal Kombat clone? No, there's already 10 Mortal Kombats, and they weren't that compelling. So, I mean, they were cute, pivotal games, but I don't get it.
I'll be honest though, they were looking for 35 grand. They hit just a hair under 14,000. I would think with, enough kind of promotion and stuff, they would be able to get some of these guys. The
following is out there. There's a lot of folks that love Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, and that was their era. And I think they could succeed if they reached enough of those people. They
had John Parrish, who played Jax in the original Mortal Kombat, was working with them to be a character. Ernie Reyes Jr., who was in some of the Ninja Turtles movies, was also going to be part of this project. I don't know. I mean, 35 grand does not seem like a whole heck of a lot of money for a full game. Maybe, they're maybe going to put out a Super NES cart and a Genesis cart, which is pretty cool. We've seen some other games that have come out that, even some of these things that like Ely's company is sort of revived. That I'm just, they're an original IP on 16-bit console, and people just kind of flock to it and go bananas because it's a new game for an old legacy console. And I'm just kind of surprised that for whatever reason they didn't hit 35 grand, which seems pretty modest for putting out a new game. What do you guys think about that?
Kind of what I said. Not much to add.
Yeah. All right.
I didn't hear what you said. I've been tweaking the settings on the live broadcast because it was spluttering on YouTube. Something about new games on old systems.
There's a show title, Tweaking the Settings.
Tweaking the Settings. I think.
Yeah. I was just gonna say a new digital game. And they're gonna put it out on cart for looked like Genesis and Super NES. 35 grand didn't seem like a huge ask from the community to help them get this game out there, where, I think we've seen some other games like Wisdom, old Wisdom Tree stuff that comes out, and people flock to it for whatever reason to get a new game on a legacy console, and for whatever reason, this didn't hit it, and I would think they could probably retool and get that 35 grand. It doesn't seem like they're asking for an ungodly amount of money here.
I think it depends on the game. How desirable is the game? If it's a game from a studio like you mentioned Pico, what they tended to do was pick up games from known studios that weren't finished or that for some reason just didn't get released. They finished them off and put them out. But if you're talking about some homebrew that some guy's written at home, there might not be that great demand for it.
Yeah, I mean, like the Wisdom Tree stuff, that's all got that kind of cultural legacy to it. Everyone sort of knew about the Bible adventures and things like that, and it was all. But a lot of people wouldn't have, had the means to come across the original cartridge. But something that's kind of brand new and never heard about by a lot of people, something that's a bit more of an unknown quantity, you're going to want to drop like 35 quid on something that you're not really aware of or have any sort of connection to.
'Cause Jesus.
Yeah, maybe they should just put Jesus in there. If you guys go ahead and you're listening and you retool this game, put Jesus as a playable character in there, and your chances will get much better.
Stage 3 profits.
Gotta be a playable character, though.
Yeah. Scott, are you looking at the live stream? There's an interesting aircraft I want you to look at.
All right, just a moment.
It requires some effort to get airborne, but I'm more concerned about the landing.
Let's see. Hold on. Oh, yeah. Those foot launch gliders.
Yeah.
That's actually super short history lesson. Back in the 70s when the ultralights, or as they're called in UK and Europe, microlights, when those were first becoming a thing, they were all foot launched. And there were ultralights like the Easy Riser and the Eagle 2 and all that were pretty much a safety hazard. They finally allowed them to get a little heavier so they could put in proper, structure and proper power plants. But no, that's perfectly viable. I mean, it's a super lightweight aircraft, easy to launch. Landing, you just come down, you land on a little skid on the nose, which you can kind of see there. And no, that's a pretty sensible approach, actually.
Right, so you
It's
don't
like a hang
need to land
glider
on
with a
foot.
bit of
then.
wind protection.
Yeah, it is. So you don't need to land on foot.
No, I mean, it's a straight up glider. It's going to have a hell of a sink ratio on it. But no, it's that's legit. Here's something that isn't terribly legit, though. Zen Studios, and this was set in by Sean Stevenson, and his quote here is, "Sigh, just why?" And the guys over at Zen Studios have a new iteration of their Zen Pinball, where they take a purely mechanical beast and turn it into a playable photograph. Something I've never found a lot of interest in. But they do stuff like, to keep the child-friendly rating, they went through and they cleaned up like backglass images and all. They cite an example of Medieval Madness where, there's quotes like, for example, the Lord comes out and he says, where's the quote? I want to get it right. "I am Lord Howard Hertz. Who the fuck are you?" And it says this setting can be toggled with, variations of the game. And it goes on to a longer list of them. Yeah, I mean, first of all, turning something at its essence is mechanical into a video product, I see no point in. But then taking something that has, like, pinball is essentially meant for an adolescent to adult male audience, for the most part. Now, I don't see anything wrong whatsoever with getting girls into pinball. I mean, that's great. More players, it helps the industry, right? But it certainly has a history, and I don't think it deliberately needs to be changed to accommodate anybody. But, if in my experience, you put pinballs out on location like we did with the Powers Fest, and people went nuts for it, male and female alike. So I think if women decide they like pinball of their own accord, fine and good. But it certainly did have a certain male demographic. And there's certain things that men like. Profanity, boobs, things like that. That's why if you look at, the great boob wars of the 70s, right? Bally and Midway and all those companies got into these basically challenges of who could draw the bigger, better breasts on a pinball machine. And you look at Kiss Pinball, there's even little bump outs in the plastics to include more breast. It is what it is, So, yeah, going through and censoring and, cleaning it up is just dumb. You're taking away part of the cheeky appeal to the intended audience. To capture an audience that is who? That otherwise said, I would love to play Medieval Madness as a playable photograph, but not until they take out that saucy language. I don't see how this is a thing.
Yeah. There's another interesting landing and takeoff there for you. In the meantime, I'll cover one that I sent in. Retro Gaming, the movie. It was on Kickstarter for a couple of days, and then it went away. This was a UK-based film that was going to cover the classic era of video games, which they determined was the 1990s. And sadly, after a few days on Kickstarter, they cancelled it. The goal was £25,000. They made £619 and then stopped it for whatever reason. Maybe they figured out the 90s.
They figured out what a movie costs, and they realized they forgot to add a few commas.
Yeah. And maybe realised that 90s weren't the classic era of video gaming. But anyway, there's
only two things wrong: what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Yeah, other than that, I love it.
Nice. How much was it they wanted and had they made?
They wanted £25,000 and they made £619.
Oh, $794 before it closed down.
That may be dollars. That may be dollars.
Yeah, so Well, it did. Yeah, it did. So there's a little thing that you have to highlight, and it says converted from. So $794 or 619 pounds. Like I said, they figured out that they needed 32 mil to do a mediocre movie, and adjusted accordingly by canceling.
I can't remember what the budget for our film is. Ended up, but it was at least double that. Wasn't huge still though, but
because you keep fucking off to Scotland.
Well, yeah, exactly. we keep not finishing the filming and having to do more.
So what's the gist of this film anyway? I see you doing all the work. I've completely forgot to ask.
It is sort of its base level. It's kind of an art heist film. There's a bit of comedy in there. There's a lot of sort of dark drama as well, which goes along with the side story. So yeah, the sort of short of it is guys getting mixed up who are sort of small time criminals get mixed up with some people who are a bit more big time, stealing some art from them, and then sort of turns out there's sort of a bit more deeper reasoning as to why this art is valuable, and yeah, lots of people die.
So where does the swimming naked in a lake come into it?
That's when that's whether actually there was a guy fully clothed in a river. Me being naked in a lake's just my downtime, my spare time. That's completely unrelated to the film.
So I've got a few plane gifs going on. What causes that effect, Scott?
Say again?
What causes that effect that's in that gif there?
What effect?
On the live stream, yeah.
Hold on.
Because it looks gorgeous.
You're talking about the giant flames coming out of the out of the exhaust?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. Because
it looks like an Apple Progress bar.
Well, I was looking for maybe vapor, trailer, but no, that's just called the afterburner. So, let's say you've got a jet engine and it's making 30,000 pounds of thrust, right? Mm-hmm. But you really need 60,000 pounds of thrust. What you do then is you introduce more fuel, and there's this annular ring. Basically, it's a whole giant nozzle assembly, and it just sprays in massive amounts of fuel that is atomized, and then that burns. Now, we in America and most of the world, it's called an afterburner. In the UK and a couple other parts of the world, it's called a reheater. And for some reason, in the Blackbird program, we call it a reheater too. It doesn't much matter what it's called, afterburner reheater. But yeah, that's basically it dumps it, and that's how sort of the goal that's being sought in aircraft for a long time now is what's called super cruise, which is the ability to go supersonic on pure turbine power without dumping in extra fuel. Right. The problem is with afterburners, it dumps in a tremendous amount of fuel to make a tremendous amount of thrust, which burns a tremendous amount of fuel and depletes your fuel very quickly. That's why, when you have like that F-15 Eagle, they light the afterburner. Yeah, they go up to Mach, 2.1 or whatnot, and they're guzzling fuel so fast they've got minutes at that speed.
Yeah. Alrighty. Did we do the Color Asteroids story?
We did.
Tweaking?
Yes, I got one here from Thomas Gwynnon. Yep. Don't want to butcher his name. Thomas sent one in here. What's that?
That horse is bolted.
It's a bit late now.
He's launched a Kickstarter it's a brand new game for the original NES. It's called Alfonso's Arctic Adventure. It's a puzzle platformer. Features over 90 levels, 4 playable characters, 30 types of enemies, and 7 bosses. The campaign has been an immediate success. It was fully funded within 16 hours. So I took a look at this one. His goal was $7,621, which seemed, very achievable. He's at 17,000 and some change right now with 17 days to go. 279 backers. So this is a game that he's going to be putting out for the original NES. It kind of looks like a combination of Super Mario 2, Super Mario 3 with the overworld. There's even sort of like a side-scrolling shooter type part where you're being carried by a character and a little bit of shmup action there. He was successful with his first game, Eskimo Bob, in 2017. And it looks like he's kind of carrying on a lot of his original characters here. It's kind of cool. He had his son, Elijah, helped him with some of the sound for the game. Has an original soundtrack. It looks very playable. You're kind of collecting dead fish, it looks like. I don't know what the legality is. Like, some of these sprites look awfully familiar, so I don't know if he's borrowing some of this art or, my apologies if it's completely original. But it does very much look like artwork from Super Mario Brothers 2 and 3. It looks like one of the characters has like a stick that he kind of shoots out. There's a 2-player melee mode where you can play 2 players and kind of fight each other, platforming style. It's obviously going to be a success. You can pick this thing up for, let's see, there's all kinds of different price tiers, but looking about $40 American US for the cartridge and the manual, and then it kind of goes up from there.
Yeah, I did look at this one when it came in, and I know what you're saying about the Mario-esque graphics and stuff. It does have that kind of look. Looks a good game, though. Looks to be some interesting play mechanics with, building the bridges to get across the gaps and using blocks for different things. It looks a pretty cool game, and obviously it's going to happen, so you can get it.
Cool. Quick one here from me, which is, you can probably file under Scott's. Just because you can, it doesn't mean you probably should. And this was one where someone had retweeted a post they'd made. Well, actually, they hadn't posted it before, so it wasn't reposted, but they decided to post it now. Basically, they just thought to themselves, I've got a USB on-the-go adapter for my tablet, and I've got a USB floppy drive. Can I run games in DOSBox off the floppy drive on a tablet? And it turns out you totally can.
Yes, you can.
So there's a little video there. It's not the slickest of experiences because you have to keep waiting for Android to mount the floppy, and then you sort of go into DOSBox, mount that location, and you can then sort of access it as a normal DOS file system and run off an actual USB floppy drive on an Android tablet.
You sent another one in there. So I sent in one there called House Schmack Z, fake their demo. I mentioned that earlier.
Let me just interject real quick.
Yeah.
That's why I have been inappropriately quiet for the last 8 minutes and 32 seconds.
Yeah.
I have not seen this stop drop in retro production until now.
Yeah.
And wowie kazowie. Holy shit, Batman.
Yeah.
Holy mangled prototyped, Robin. They have really unlocked the next level. Mike, there might even have to be a fucking after appendix in the thing. Where do you go from the chameleon? You go to the Smack Z.
Yeah.
These fools, oh my God. Mike, please continue. This is just stunning.
Yeah, so he's done a series of these. He seems to follow all the updates. This is Stop, Drop and Retro, of course, that I'm talking about. The latest one is this one I've linked to, but you really need to go back and look at his other coverage as well. So they've got, it's a handheld console, and they've got a demo unit at TGS. I forget what that was, but it was, a expo style thing, and they took a longer demo.
Tokyo Game Show,
thank you. And the unit they've got, the screen doesn't kind of fit properly, and there's no display on it. They're saying, they're having trouble getting the display to work, and some of the buttons stand at different heights, like you've got a start and select button, and they protrude different distances out of the front of the console. The analog stick kind of sticks. If you move it, it doesn't return to the center. The buttons, the ABXY buttons, laid out in SNES style, are all twisted and, again, don't really feel right. And so Stop, Drop and Retro kind of reconstructs how he thinks they did it all, and I think he nails it. I won't spoil it for you. You need to go and watch this video, but I think he's pretty much bang on with his supposition.
There's a moment where they show the back of the thing, which is never a good move in making consoles. Historically,
rookie mistake.
Yeah,
rookie mistake. Yeah, when Mr. Lee tells you not to show the back of that thing, you really better not show the back of that thing. And
real quick, was the Chameleon sort of the first real faked?
No.
There was other consoles that were faked.
Yes, this was the first one in the modern era. This was the first one that. Well, let me. There's no good way to phrase this. This is the first one that occurred in the modern era where the scrutiny and communication was instantaneous, where people involved with it that knew the dirty business could immediately reach the public and confer with each other. This is the first one that took place in the modern age where you go out, you put a picture on Facebook, and 400,000 people see it, 5,000 people comment, and from the photo, they notice relevant things, right? In the past, these things took place out of the public eye, so all you ever got was a push one-way only publication, like a magazine, right? That showed a picture of the thing sitting there saying it was a thing. So, yeah, it did happen in the past, but the Chameleon was the first time it happened in the modern age where the full scrutiny and wrath of the net nerds could be brought to bear and shut the thing down. So
I guess that was the fan.
So this has happened legitimately as well. If you look at like Clay Cowgill's post in the Atari Age thread, and in the Brian Bagnall book, Commodore, I forget the full title of the book, the story of Commodore.
On the Edge.
By
Brian Bagnall.
In there, Commodore faked a running system at a show. But the engineers and the people presenting it all knew it was fake. They knew they could do it. They just weren't ready at that time. And they did.
It was a mock-up is what it was. That's the best way to put it. It was a mock-up.
But they knew that they would have the product ready when it came time to production. But everyone inside knew they were just going to wing it for the show. Here's what it'll look like. Here's what it'll do. The public at the show just kind of weren't aware of it at the time. So things were legitimately faked. But,
legitimately fake.
Yeah.
That's another show title.
But the Chameleon was a whole different story because they actually had nothing. They're not saying, here's what it'll look like, here's what it'll do, because they simply didn't know.
This Smock Z collected, we'll call it $750,000, which is certainly a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, for launching a console, I mean, that seems like you're off by a whole zero,
Well, not necessarily. Not for the hardware they were claiming. But there's this one marvelous still in Stop, Drop, and Retro's video where it shows the video panning across the back of this thing, and you see all the certification logos and everything. And basically, what is the core of like a Game Boy Advance that's just been glued into place and is sticking up out of the back of this thing. And I literally am looking at this. I can hear somebody's voice saying, no, we really utilized the back portion of a Game Boy Advance because we didn't have time to get the video out working. And it is really the same story all over again.
Yeah. There was one.
Wow.
Yeah, there was one random sent in, which was an HDMI lead for the PS1 and PS2. And I watched Metal Jesus Rocks. He did a video on this, trying the unit out on some various games. I don't know if you've seen that random, but there's a few issues with the PS2 side of things. But it does make the PS1 look a lot better.
Cool. Another one I sent in, which is the announcement of the opening date for the National Video Game Museum reopening, because it was in Nottingham and it is now moved to Sheffield, just down the road from me in town, and that is going to be opening in the 24th of November. Nice on the first picture of the article is a couple of arcade machines that were all the ones that were sat behind my desk a few years ago that I used to use just basically to store clothes on. But yeah, the whole thing's moved to Sheffield. So I'll obviously pop down there and check it out and report back. I imagine it's going to be similar to the setup that was in Nottingham, just in a new location. But if anyone's been there, then it'd be more of the same probably. If anyone's not been there, you should get down there. It's a little bit further away from you if you're a southerner, I suppose now, but still on the M1, so it shouldn't be too hard to get to.
We'll have to take a trip.
Aye.
Got one here from Glenn Minette, and it says, looks to be a very expensive limited run of Beatles pinball from Stern. Yeah, I've been following this, and I'm not a big Beatles fan. I mean, historically, no doubt, they're huge, And they did, to their credit, do a lot more than I think people give them credit for. And in some ways, they're overhyped. It's the Beatles, But they did this, Stern's releasing this pinball. They're going to do 1,964 units for 1964, of which 100 are going to be the diamond level. And it is said that this will be the most expensive pinball of all time. Now, I don't think they mean like collector resale values like Medieval Madness or Big Bang Bar getting up in the $12,000, $14,000 range. But I think they mean new retail price. And I got to tell you, I will seek one of these out to play it. Like I said, not being a huge Beatles fan, I wouldn't buy one. But they do some neat stuff, like they have a spinning disc, which you haven't seen in a game in a while. And it's done, of course, as a record, right? The artwork is a wonderful mix of photographs and drawn art, and some rendered art. It shows sort of the whole culture, the music, the fans, the artistic style of the era, So I got to say, I think this is a beautiful machine. It's not one that, like I said, I would go out and get, but it's certainly one I would play and look forward to seeing.
Yeah, I suppose it's got some good music in it while you're playing it, but I don't know if I'd go out and spend a whole lot of money on it. I suppose it's an acquired taste, the colours that they've used on there. I guess you either like that or you don't. Kind of like the 60s throwback Batman that came out recently.
Very much, yes.
Yeah, it's you either like it or you don't. I liked it, Scott didn't. I guess this is going to be pretty much the same thing. Got one here. I think it was from me. No, it was from Random, announcing the Mega SG. Have we done that one yet? Which is the new.
I don't think we have, no.
The new console from Analog. Of course, they're following up on the previous Nintendo ones they've done, the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo. This is a reimagining of the underdog that led a 16-bit revolution. Engineered completely in FPGA, compatible with 2,180 plus Sega Genesis, Mega Drive, and Master System games. You can pre-order it now. And as usual, looks a great looking unit. Let's have a look if I can see a price on this thing. Now, these aren't the cheapest systems in the world, but they are good products. They always get good reviews. They use the FPGA, of course, to support all
They're using Kevtris's cores now.
Yeah, he's been down to the core store and can't see a price on this.
What was
Also support Sega. You called it Sega CD, or you could call it Mega CD, depending where you are. Wireless controllers. Supports original controllers, of course, with the 9-pin ports on the front. High fidelity sound. Unparalleled compatibility.
I can't remember what the price is, but I think it's cheaper than the SNES one because instead of doing Bluetooth controllers, which they did last time, they're now using a proprietary 2.4 gigahertz wireless.
Yeah, 2.4G wireless receiver.
Yeah, you can't use as obviously with the SNES one, you could use a sort of a bit more variety of controllers, so like the 8-bit DOE stuff worked. But yeah, you now save because they don't have to worry about putting the actual I guess there's still going to be licensing costs with putting Bluetooth hardware in things.
Yeah, you plug a 9-pin receiver in, and your controller connects to that. No, can't see a price. Just try and pre-order. Maybe that'll give me the price. Oh, there you go, $189.99. So, yeah, they're not the cheapest, but they're probably, for the purists out there, I would say the most accurate. And if you want, the next best thing to the original console, and arguably better than the original console.
Native HDMI.
Yeah. It's got to be the way to go, I think.
Yeah, closest other option is, you have an original console, you mod it to have an RGB SCART output, and then you go from that into either a FrameMeister, which is very expensive, or into a I'm looking at it, open source scan converter, which is a bit cheaper.
Like you said, an open source skank converter.
Yeah, skank converter.
Skank converter.
I'd buy that for $1.
Did we anybody hit the 11 Sega products you've never heard of?
Not yet.
No.
All right, well, I'll bring that one up. Oh, it was presented by Mike James.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's 11 products that you're not supposed to know about. Most of these I've seen. One was the Pods, which was a series of little bubbles that detected the position of your hands for controlling certain games. I've seen it, not in person, but I've seen it. The Envy sticker printer, which was a huge thing for Japanese youth. Haven't seen that. Sega's Grand Pianist, which it's hard to tell the scale of this thing. Each key is about 4 millimeters wide. Wow. So it's a tiny little piano that plays songs. A robo pitcher that pitches balls for you to hit. A fireworks projector, which I guess projects images of fireworks. The home planetarium. I think I've seen some of the Sega planetariums. Yeah, it says here they've released a dozen. Yeah, that sounds about right, because I know I've seen a couple out there. Poochie, which looks like a low-budget Sony Aibo clone. Picture Magic, which is a sketch tablet, I guess. Lets you do things to pictures.
I remember the Poochie.
Yeah, there's a digital camera that worked with Sega's print machine. The IR7000, this I remember. This came out in the mid-90s, and it would let you do interactive games and messaging between units, which was not a thing until that point. Sega Vision, which is a portable media player, seems pretty cool. Yeah, so some of those we have, some of those we haven't.
I remember Poochie being a thing over here for a while. I remember seeing those in the shops. Obviously didn't do that well if they're on this list, but I remember seeing them. Sparkle Puss has gone to empty his bladder, but I know he wanted to...
No, I'm back.
Okay, the Intellivision Amico.
Yeah, the one that we've all been waiting for.
Yep.
I'd say you and Scott should probably kick it off since you're probably closest to the project.
Well, the reason I didn't is because you said you wanted to.
Oh no! I just wanted to hold it for the end because I feel like it's going to have the most discussion.
Okay, so this an email blast from Intellivision Entertainment, and this is all official stuff, no behind-the-scenes stuff. Introducing the Intellivision Amico. Hello, Intellivision family. We're so happy to be able to share these details of the new Intellivision console. Please help us spread the word by sharing our reveal trailer and information on social media. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to giving you more updates soon. So there's a whole long wordy email about it, about some of its features. It's going to launch in the price range of $149 to $179, and it's going to release in the UK, in North America, and Europe, and it will all be on the same day on 10/10/2020, which is kind of a cool launch date. Almost binary, but not quite. So they go through a software overview, some stuff about the controllers, but the software is interesting. All games are family friendly and rated for everyone. Every game version on the console is exclusive. Quality over quantity, so there will be a strict quality control seal of approval. Balanced gameplay and design for equal opportunity gaming for all. So this thing they're saying, isn't aimed at the kid in his bedroom playing with a 16 million button controller. This is, have it in your family room. Everyone can play the same game, multiplayer. The controllers, you will get 2 wireless Bluetooth controllers, but it's up to 8-player compatible. The interesting thing, aside from the touchscreen controls that may or may not work, I'll have to see at the time, but you can use a smartphone as an alternate controller. So you'll have, all your family round, up to 8 people can play. You'll have the 2 controllers with it, and then I guess 6 people can install the app, connect to your system, and use their smartphone as a controller, which I think is a great idea. We'll have to see how the touch screen controls work out when it's here, but the controllers you get will have 4 arcade-style tactile buttons. We'll have gyroscopes, accelerometers, force feedback. You can use it horizontally, you can use it vertically, you can flip it for left or right-handed, and it's a wireless onboard charging controller. It has a small touch screen in, so you literally sit the controller on top of the unit and it will charge, no need to plug it in. The controller will have a speaker, a microphone, and I mentioned the app already. So it will be HDMI out, it will be Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and have Ethernet connection, multiple USB ports, and a system expansion interface. So there is loads of information going down on some reimagined games that are coming. So some Intellivision classics, Astro Smash, Shark, Baseball, Night Stalker, Skiing, Math Fun, a whole long list of those. A load of Atari classics that are reimagined and remade exclusively for this thing. Pong, Asteroid, Centipede, Tempest, Adventure, Missile Command Yars, Revenge, Breakout, Lunar Lander, Night Driver, Skydiver, Warlords. Some Imagic classics, again reimagined and remade exclusively. Microsurgeon, Atlantis, Demon Attack, Dracula, Beauty and the Beast, Ice Trek, Swords and Serpents, Dragonfire, Truckin', and more. And other games are listed here from various companies and systems. Mine are 2049ers, Super Burger Time, Bad Dudes, Caveman Ninja, Moon Patrol, R-Type. So the list goes on. So loads and loads of games coming to this thing, but new games, interestingly, will be exclusives to this thing. So it's not a game you can get for a $5 on Steam. Now you have to pay $30 for a cartridge for this. They are exclusive games. They're all family-friendly games. So they've aimed themselves at that very specific family market, I guess.
I think all the games are downloadable. There won't be any cartridges for this thing.
Yeah, the Ethernet connection and Wi-Fi, so they've got their own store as well. It does mention further down they'll have their own store for you to purchase games from.
I have a whole lot of thoughts on this, and we're going to have these guys on here. Looks like next month to discuss the console, and I've got a signed NDA, so I can't say a couple of things I really want to say, which is kind of the pain in the ass of being NDA'd in.
There's an interesting point they made that we can ask them about.
To kind of go at it from the point of
let's start off
with what I can really say. There's a lot I could say that I can't, but of things I can say, they are being super clear about what they do and don't have. If you watch this promotional video, they put down like very specific text saying preliminary conceptual designs. Now, the team that they've got is pretty well flushed out.
Yeah,
this was not assembled. This was not assembled through a drunken, LinkedIn click fest. This is some pretty solid players, and the overall concept. They're very. In fact, their guy that's the hardware evangelist his main focus is this controller. And he's pretty darn passionate about what this controller is going to be. And the idea of, in television, you had the rotary wheel, then you had the keypad that could be repurposed. The only sensible modern day iteration of that would be a touchscreen, no doubt. And that's what they're doing. Of everything that they're doing, of course, the inductive charging, you lay the thing on the top, it charges. Those are pretty low-hanging things. You literally just have a coil of very thin wire that is done as a decal on the inside of the casing. You've got the opposite on the other side, and it's bypassing current through one coil. It stimulates current flow in the other, and that's how you do wireless charging. They all work like that. It's no magic, and it's very cheap to implement. All in all, everything they're doing in this, I think, is headed in the right direction. Their team that's expanding and fleshing out the hardware section, I think, has good, strong leadership. The only thing about this that I'm remotely concerned about that, I would caution them to be very careful about is announcing a price. Now, they picked a price range, right? So knowing what's out there, what it costs to do hardware like this, I don't, like I always say about, you've heard me talk quite a bit about the Hyperkin products. I always look at a Hyperkin product, other than a couple where they really kind of brought it, But many of the Hyperkin products, and certainly the early ones, I always looked at it and said, guys, if you would, I don't want to buy something that's okay for 50 when I could buy something that's great for 60. And that's really the difference. You're talking $10 more. And they say, well, we don't want to get out of the impulse purchase price. Well, how about going to the quality price, right? And it's always like if they had made the plastic a couple mils thicker so it felt more solid, or if they had gone with just a slightly better screen that would have cost them $2 more. There's all these little things, right? So as I'm looking at the price, I'm back, reverse engineering the price and thinking, all right, what can they put in the box for that money, right? And yeah, it's achievable. I would say they're going to maybe find out they need to spend or charge a little bit more per console. So the danger is, like, with the modern console market out there, PS4, Xbox, whatever, it's, the $300 to $400 price range. Okay, this will be sub 200. I think right now announcing any kind of price may tie your hardware a little too tightly, or you may just have to go, look, we figured $179, it's going to be $220. Okay, so if you never say it's $179, the $220 isn't such a big surprise considering what you're getting for the money. So, yeah, that would be my one and only caveat, my one and only, hey guys, think about this. I know they want to get it out there that it's family friendly, that the price is reasonable. I get it, but what if this thing really gets legs? What if it really gets traction? What if it maybe, let's say, people that really catch on to those controllers, like they did to the Wii, and this thing gets maybe some of the heat of something like the Wii. I would do everything that they're doing and the way that they're doing it I just would hold off on those price announcements because that could be too constrictive or maybe detrimental down the road. Other than that, I'm really, really liking where this is headed.
I think they've got, so you can talk about some of the team that's involved in a sec, but Tommy Tallarico is obviously heading this up pretty much, and certainly the public face of it. And they've got a good tagline here that he came out with at Portland. They did a big presentation at Portland this last weekend. We are creating a console that parents want to buy, not that they are asked to buy. So he, what's his title? Is he the president or something of Intellivision Productions?
He's basically, he bought a big chunk of Intellivision Productions, and there's funding from a lot of sources on this, but he's definitely got, it's the reverse Kennedy. He is using his ideas and his team's ideas, and he's naming them publicly and incorporating them publicly, and they're spending actual money on actual product. So that's good.
So who else have they got working on it?
So, well, obviously there's Emily Reichbach Rosenthal. She is, Emily of Intellivision, right? She had been there for 9 years now as a part of Intellivision. So she's a huge part of it. Obviously Tommy, right? And Paul Nermix, our good buddy, he's in there. And he's playing a pretty key role. So he's a muckety-muck in it, if you will. A lady named Perrin Kaplan. She was over at Nintendo for quite some time. As well as Beth Llewellyn. Those two come from the Nintendo side. And they were pretty ranking people that did quite a bit of publicity and marketing and all that. So they were definitely a big part of it. David Perry, not terribly familiar with him, but he's got, a pretty long history. These aren't like former
VP. It was the guy who ran Shiny Entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, these are all, maybe people that were in the corporate office that we didn't necessarily know by name because they weren't, always developers. But then there's quite a few that were. I mean, you look at Scott Samora. I mean, that dude, Pokemon, Moon Patrol, Kung Fu Master, 10-Yard Fight, Digimon. That guy's, he's pretty hardcore, pretty successful. What it is not is a collection of people that used to be the batterer procurement specialist over at Arby's. So there is, certainly these are all in-industry types. Couple other guys, I don't know personally, but they're pretty good names. Then there's the folks that we know, right? Like Steve Romney, he's been with Intellivision forever. He's been on the show. Bill Fisher, he's their VP of Tech, right? And he's been around a long time, and so Bill and Steve, these are all Intellivision hands. They're big players. Their main hardware guy, Andre, when the name was brought up, I was like, I don't know that I've heard of this guy. So I looked up what he did. I was like, oh yeah. And I was talking with Clay, and he's like, oh yeah, Andre, yeah. So he's one of those guys that maybe isn't always in the limelight, but kind of like Clay, he's got a long history of actually developing product, So Andre's kind of a big deal. Mike Micah,
Phil Adams.
Yeah, okay,
Phil Adam,
Micah, sure. I've met the guy.
Didn't Phil Adam, wasn't he on Kennedy's advisory board?
Phil Adams certainly was.
He was the head
Phil
of most of
Adam
Kennedy's companies. In fact, I think he registered one of Mike's companies.
Yeah. So certainly, and as I mentioned, Emily, is a major player, and Paul, of course. So pretty good team. Now Andre, he's focused on controller development. So like I said, they're getting rolling. They're not ready to go to production yet anytime soon. They're in the early planning phases of it, which makes perfect sense if you think about it. So yeah, still almost 2 years to release.
Yep. 10/10/2020.
And yeah, I gotta say, it looks like they're doing this right.
Well, I have more questions about this thing. I'd certainly like to see them successful. Known some of the people that are involved in this project. So Tommy Tallarico, great guy. I mean, Paul, great guy. Emily, awesome lady, super nice. So I want to see them successful. My biggest concern / question comes around the controller. I think historically, if you look at a lot of controllers kind of dictate whether a system becomes popular or not. They sort of hang on the success of the controller and the acceptance of the controller. I think the 7800 had a horrible controller. I personally never was a fan of the Intellivision controller. I think a lot of that is due to that keypad. There's not enough differentiation and placement of the buttons. So you kind of get lost because you're having to look down at the controller to figure out what the hell you're punching. Now, I realize a lot of modern games, it can be overwhelming for somebody that's new to gaming to kind of get into it. And I think a lot of gamers have sort of evolved through different console generations to become accustomed to adding more buttons. Okay, now there's analog sticks. Now you can click in the analog sticks. Now there's extra shoulder buttons, But you kind of know where your thumb goes without having to look at the controller. I feel with this, because there's no tactile feedback from a touch screen, I could see that being problematic. Now, the Wii was so successful because it was like a remote control that you held in your hand, and the buttons were simple. You didn't really get lost when you're using it by not looking at it. You kind of knew where all the buttons were. This thing, I don't know if the touch screen is going to take you out of the experience or not. I hope it doesn't. But I think with, you look at the Dreamcast where you had the little LCD thing and having to look down at the controller, it kind of took you out of the gameplay to some degree. So how is that going to work? That's sort of my biggest question mark. I think if you nail the controller, it makes the success of the console much easier. I mean, I thought the Ouya was a great console. So many people had problems with the controller. They didn't like it. I think the N64 would have been much more popular with a better controller. So I think this system's going to live or die by how widely accepted, and revered this controller becomes.
It's going to be critical. And I'll say this, like when you think about the Wii and its controller, the Wii controller was nothing more than a GameCube controller split in two, and then one of the analog controllers on each side being replaced by two accelerometers, right? So by moving the controllers around, all you're doing is moving analog top hat. That's it, right? That's all the Wii controller really is. It's not magic. It's not sorcery. It's not a new idea. It's a slight twist on an existing controller. But it was perceived because it was so well, the whole thing already worked. If you look at the Wii is essentially a Super GameCube. It's based on the same technology. Yeah, it's in a different box. It looks a little different, but it was pretty much just a turbo GameCube. And when they did the turbo GameCube, they already had a proven controller. They already knew how to work it. All they had to do was go in there and get things like those accelerometers replacing analog top hats to work. And boy, did they. So it was absolute genius. The hardware wasn't all that magical. It was just the implementation. So I think with this controller concept they've got, all right, you pick it up, you've got the rotary wheel, which can do a lot of different things. And then the touch controller, it could be used as the original Intellivision did. Okay, it displays options, selections. During sports games, it can display the different icons for play. In RPG, it can display, different, let's say you pause the game, like you're playing, say, Fallout, right? You hit the button, you bring up the Pip-Boy, you're selecting, inventory, you're equipping items. Same idea here. You could hit it, go through, do your selections, and then return to the screen for gameplay. And as long as, and this will be something we'll discuss with them when they come on the show, do you intend to make this controller only usable and supported for your console, or are you going to push out support packages so people can integrate in other things? I can kind of see how they want it to go either way. I can see compelling arguments for either one. But, yeah, I think you're right, Mark, that the adaptation and acceptance of this controller and how it works will be key. I mean, yeah, it could be done wrong. There are ways to do this wrong, no question. But there are also ways to do it right. And honestly, Tommy and Nurmix and Emily and Steve and Bill, these guys, they know how to get this right. And I don't have any expectation other than they're going to come up with some Nintendo Wii kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see some of these original, exclusive games that are going to come out for it. Particularly Toe Jam and Earl, Bad Dudes, and R-Type. Those are IP that I'm very fond of, and I'd be excited to see what they do there. Some of the other Intellivision stuff, sure, I'd like to see Shark and some other things, but I'm not, I don't know that I'd rush out to buy it for those. But my question is, will these exclusive truly be exclusive, or is it going to kind of be like, the shell game they do at the big box retailers at Christmas time, where they say, this Vizio, 50-inch Vizio TV is on sale for $300, and we will meet or beat any competitor's price by 20% if you can find it. And they know damn well they're never going to find it because the version that goes to Best Buy is just
feature
slightly
script. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like one different screw or something in it, so it's a slightly different model than the version that they're selling at Target or something like that. So are these truly going to be exclusives, or is it just going to be like there's maybe a level or two difference? So I think TBD on that. But I like the idea that, hey, the only stuff that's coming out on this console is only what's going to be available. Will that be enough? Is the quality, the Blue Sky Ranger seal of approval? I think that's great. Need to know a little bit more about what does that mean. Is there enough people out there that really want this thing? Because unless it hits critical mass, I don't know that you're gonna go to a publisher and get them to create a game for this console when they could easily throw it out on iTunes or PlayStation Network or something else, another 2D game. And, if the marketplace is 40 million people versus, 1 million people that have this device, like why 40 to 1 odds, it doesn't even make sense that you would make something exclusive unless they're going to throw money at it. So I think the price point sounds right. I think that's, in the realm of impulse. Will the device do some other things? Can I put Netflix on it so it's more than
us one of these new retro consoles, right? That's going to maybe straddle two worlds of being a retro system and being a modern system. One of the things that tends to come up from two different points of view is Netflix or other streaming video services. And kind of like with the Chameleon, it's like, don't But to me, if this thing does or doesn't have Netflix, it has no bearing whatsoever on whether or not I buy it. For many, because I'm buying a video game console, for many people, whether or not it does play Netflix is a huge thing. So I guess, Mark, from your point of view, since it seems to matter to you whether or not it does play Netflix, why is that?
Well, I mean, and I'm looking at simple mass appeal here. I think that a lot of consumers would, there's obviously a certain market for this thing because it has Intellivision on it. They are fond of the system. They're going to buy it, but that's a very small audience. Now, if this is competing in the same price point as my Roku device, where I can stream Netflix and I can play some games on it. I mean, you can play some games on the Fire TV, the Apple TV, the Roku. Now, how popular those things are as game systems, that can be debated. But the fact that it does these things...
Again, to me, non-existent. Like, my Amazon TV can play games. It's never fucking occurred to me. I've never found the interest.
Sure.
And there's not a game on there I give a shit about.
But you're one type of consumer. But,
exactly.
There's a lot of people out there that they have Pac-Man Championship Edition on their Fire Stick, and they're waiting for somebody to, come home from work, and they throw on Pac-Man Championship Edition and play a game or two until, it's time to start that movie when the other person gets there. Or there's kids that play it, and they're getting ready for the bus in the morning, and, they're not going to throw on Netflix, but maybe they want to play some Crossy Road or something. So I think from a parent's perspective, and the people that are fond of the Intellivision are probably 40 or older at this point. For that 30-something-year-old parent that's going to buy a device for their kids, it's going to be dedicated to a living room, I think that they come to expect to have Netflix or some sort of streaming. Netflix is the 800-pound gorilla, but some streaming devices, whether it's Hulu or something else on their device. I mean, if you're going to hook up, a lot of TVs, they may only come with 2 HDMI ports. So one's connected to a cable box, or maybe a lot of people, cord cutting is a wildfire that will not end anytime soon. So if I'm going to start hooking up all these different devices to my TV, and I have limited cords, you really want the pain in the ass. I mean, as simple as it sounds, of yoinking out a HDMI cord and putting something else in, but if it can replace, maybe I have an older Fire Stick at this point, or an older Roku, or some other device that's plugged into my TV, or I'm looking to get a streaming device for the first time and cut my cable, it needs to have that functionality. So I think it's pretty critical. If it's competing against those other in that same price point, like, why wouldn't you have something that could stream? And I don't know, what the feasibility or the price would be to incorporate something like that into this console. But to me, I feel like people come to expect it. I mean, I know folks out there. I work with several guys that are younger than me on my team that they have PS4s, and that PS4 does everything for them. I mean, they stream sports games, Netflix, Hulu. I mean, that is their all-in-one device. They don't have cable anymore, so if you want to have this for maybe a game room or a bedroom or something like that, it sort of needs to have that functionality. I just think you really limit your market if you're trying to get mass appeal and you can't do streaming services on it. So TBD.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more about the importance of online streaming. I couldn't agree more about the cord cutting thing not going away. I mean, I look at it. Okay, so I got DirecTV, whatever. At one point, I was paying $250 a month for that content. I'm like, this is fucking dumb. I mean, cable shouldn't exceed $100 a month, if that. And I started looking at, what am I getting for what I'm paying? Done, I'm out, right? And I saw this happen, like, with the phone company, with copper lines, right? At one point, I had 2 legit, like, phone lines. And as people were abandoning phone lines, and I was getting to that point. The only reason I really kept it is my elderly mother-in-law who didn't want or trust a cell phone, and We needed a line for her in the house that would make her not feel like a psycho. And at some point, I looked at it and I thought, all right, $120 a month for just 2 unused copper phone lines. She can learn how to use a cell phone and feel comfortable. I don't care if it hurts her feelings. This is done. So what happened is as people were jumping off of copper phone lines, the phone companies were ramping up their prices trying to preserve their income. And all that did is make people more rapidly accelerate out of the copper phone line market. So certainly what you're seeing nowadays is people are looking at what they're paying for cable and satellite, and they're like, no, this has gotten to the hundreds of dollars range, which is stupid. I'm not doing it. So, yeah, I get it. And then they're going to need something to play those streaming sources on. Again, I bought one of these Amazon Fire TVs. I loaded it up with every major streaming app, and it was a horrendously inexpensive, dedicated piece of hardware that does that very well. It does play games. Sure, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. So I was very curious. Like, to me, the video game system is a video game system. Can it play Netflix? Yeah, sure. But there's a lot of times I'll put on download the latest Better Call Saul. I'll have Better Call Saul on playing while I'm on the big TV playing a video game. And I'll be watching Better Call Saul or whatever. So to me, I have no need, no care, no interest in the other way of doing things, which why I was legitimately curious about your perspective on that, because it's just not a problem I need solved. So you always have to avoid that confirmation bias of what you think works and kind of hear what other people are up to. So that's an interesting approach.
I mean, go ahead.
So I think for me, I don't need it to do any streaming stuff. I've got that well covered by my TV for one, but then fallbacks with, I've got PS4s and other sort of devices that it's covered by something or other. I think for me, it's just going to come down to the software lineup, really. Is there going to be anything I want to play? And that will be, at the end of the day, rubber hits the road. That, for me, it's just purely down to that. If there's anything interesting, and if the controllers prove to be all right, because I'm a bit skeptical about how it's going to be for sort of digital input, directional input and stuff. But if that all works, and there's compelling games to play on there, then sure, I'll consider it. But I'm gonna have to wait until more and more sort of comes out, and more news comes out on that sort of front, which is understandably probably going to be quite late on in the as we reach towards the launch date.
Well, and I mean, there's plenty of runway here. 2020. I mean, you're 2 years off on bringing this thing to market, so a lot can certainly change, especially in the next year. So they're certainly not locked in at this point. You want to give developers time to make some games for the system, but I feel like getting the hardware right, they have plenty of runway here to make adjustments. And same with the controllers.
Without a doubt. And that's one of the things that's very telling in these projects. It takes a certain amount of time to do certain things every time. You cannot shortcut what would take 12 months to do in a month and legitimately achieve the work. It cannot be done. Strictly speaking, it could be done for an amount of money that would render the project useless and obsolete. No question. So what was interesting to me, like during the Chameleon debacle, when they re-announced, like 90 days later, that the RVGS was now the Chameleon, and they had developed 2, cores and had this prototype running, I knew they couldn't have. And we had this discussion. I was like, all right, so I know what it isn't. I'm really curious what it is, because it cannot be what they're claiming, because you cannot do that work in that time frame. Period. Ever. Can't happen. So, yeah, it was kind of a neat thing to see go down. So when I see what they're doing here, all right, they announced a 2-year release time. The last 6 months is going to be all testing and getting it, over for production overseas and getting it back on the boat to America. So they really have 18 months to do this thing. They got a year and a half. And that last 6 months, development time's kind of over with, other than producing games for it. So they got 18 months. That is a realistic, believable, plausible amount of time to finish recruiting the hardware team, to get a product developed, to begin to define its ecosystem, to contract with data centers, all these things, all these accoutrements of a product that must be made and must be in place. That's how we knew in 90 days the Chameleon did not bridge 18 months of work. It didn't happen unless it was faked. And we knew it was fake. And we tried to tell people. And they were like, oh, no, it looks pretty cool. It's like, you know nothing about this. But, yeah, everything here, their time frame is realistic. It'll go by faster than they think. They'll say, remember when 2 years seemed like a long time? But, yeah, they're on a realistic, sensible timeline.
UK?
I was muted. I would pretty much agree with that. I agree with the price that Scott said a while ago, announcing a price up front because they're not, I don't know how far they are down the road with hardware, but releasing a price to give people a surprise later, they could maybe have held back on that a bit, but for me, I don't care if it has any of the other functionality. I've got 1,001 ways to do Netflix and all of that stuff. But is an all-in-one box under the TV useful? Yeah. Do I need Netflix 5 times? No. I mean, I've currently got, a Kodi box there. I've got the PS3 that does Netflix, Plex, Sky TV. I've got, a Freeview DVR that will record TV, and I've got a Chromecast in there. I can do Netflix, Plex, YouTube, and all of that stuff. So I don't really need another box. For me, if it's going to play games, it should do that and do that well. As long as it does that, then great. But I think if you end up compromising something just to add Netflix, not that it necessarily would, but I don't think that would be a great idea. Plus, if you're coming out with a new product like this that you want to compete with the other game consoles, if you're putting too much functionality in, you're confusing the market. But also by the same token, it mentions down here in this press release they're going to be the 4th company competing with Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. So, if the Xbox and the PlayStation can do Netflix and you're competing with them, do you need to do it as well? Possibly, yeah. But
it's funny. We're talking about the mixed-use devices, and this will be my final thought. I'll kind of wrap up my thoughts on this. Recently, I needed to get a new stereo for my truck. The CD player had begun to skip, and it was, the original stereo CD changer, and it had CD and radio. Okay, so the new units that are, and this is a double DIN, so it's the double height radio size. The new units that are just amazing. I mean, you screw this thing in, you plug it up, right? And now you have a backup camera if the vehicle didn't originally have one. This one didn't. So you add in a backup camera. You add in, full navigation, GPS features. You get 3-4 different USB slots that can be located in different places. You've got an SD card on the front that you stick in. And you can stick in, 128 gig SD with every song you own, and it'll play videos and movies that, answer your phone calls and display text on the screen. Basically, like everything that my newest car does, I can now add to this, roughly 10-year-old truck. And it completely updates the tech in the truck to current standards. So what I needed this thing to do was receive FM radio to have multiple video ins. And like one of the things, I've got a ham radio in my truck, and this ham radio has video out. Now, I use the same model at home that I use in the truck. And at home, I can display this to like a big 24-inch monitor, and all the functions of the radio are displayed. And now I can pipe that up to the radio, the actual, entertainment center. So now I can display the software and control screens from my amateur ham radio onto the big screen that's in the center of the console. This is all really cool stuff. But the major missions I wanted to do was video display sources, backup camera, Bluetooth, all that stuff, a big SSD card full of every song I own, and then that's kind of it, right? The two things out there, there's ones without the DVD player, and these things are maybe an inch thick. I really like the screens on them, but the ones that had every feature I needed only came on versions that included a physical DVD player. Something I do not need, something I don't care about. It actually takes up more space that could be just screen. So, why? It's another mechanism, It's something I don't care about. But it seems to me if you're going to buy a high-end enough car stereo, it's going to include the physical disc player. So that's kind of how I see this. The market says everything must have that Netflix label on it, right? I mean, cripes, the damn refrigerator has a Netflix on it, right? I don't ever have logged in the account. I never will. But that's just become an expected norm of any entertainment device that can show video that is over a certain amount of money, which you're starting at your $80 and up tablets, and every video game system ever had best be able to play Netflix. I get it. I don't care. I won't use it. It doesn't matter to me that it's there, but the market has spoken.
Well, one thing is interesting. They say they're going to be competing with Sony, Nintendo, and Xbox. They may also be competing with the Atari VCS if that ever comes out as well.
Well, I was going to say slightly apples to oranges in a way, but if you look at the Wii U, that had Netflix on it, and it had Amazon Prime, and it had YouTube, and it sold pretty fucking poorly. And then you look at the Switch, which doesn't have anything other than games on it, and that's sold like fucking bananas. So,
are you sure that doesn't have streaming?
I own the Switch. I have no idea if it has Netflix or not.
It does not. There was ways you could get around it by sort of breaking out of the Wi-Fi. Like if you when you go on a hotel Wi-Fi and you connect and it sort of automatically launches a browser for you to log in and things. There was a way you could set up your router so that it would redirect that page to YouTube, so you could actually do YouTube on a Switch, but it didn't work very well, and it's not it's not how you're supposed to do it. There's just nothing on there other than games, and it doesn't need it really. It'd be a nice sort of tablet, I suppose, to watch video on, at times, but I think a lot of people, how much, it costs about, 40 quid to buy a Amazon Fire tablet, the low end one, which has got a similar sort of size screen, just add an extra 40 quid to your kid's birthday present and just give them that.
Yeah. I never even really considered the fact that that the Switch doesn't allow for Netflix. That's kind of remarkable to realize that.
Yeah, it's
that
kind of a very curious choice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do one thing.
I guess you're right. I mean,
well.
Mine pretty much collects dust most of the time anyway, but it would actually be a pretty decent device for watching that stuff.
Yeah, aside from maybe the battery life. Might leave a bit to be desired, but it'd be alright.
Well, I guess that kind of wraps it up. Unless anybody has anything to throw in at the tail end, we'll be talking to these guys soon. So,
yeah, no, we're all done for news in for another month. Want you to stick around for a couple of minutes at the end and tweak a few settings on the stream. But yeah, thank you everybody for listening for another month. Keep sending in your news items, and we'll see you in November. Say goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Goodbye, everybody.